In this video, we'll be learning how to differentiate powers of x. So let's say we're given f of x is equal to x to the power of n. Then in this case, the rule tells us that the derivative of f dash of x, is equal to n times x to the power of n minus 1. Now let's see how we use this formula. Let's say we're given, and I'll just write example 1 here. Let's say we're asked to differentiate f of x is equal to x cubed. Well, now comparing this to the formula we have up here, we can see that n is equal to 3. And so using this formula, we can see that the derivative, f dash of x, has to be equal to n times x to the power of n minus 1. So since n is 3 in this case, this would lead us to f dash of x, the derivative that is, equals to 3 times x to the power of 3 minus 1. And finally, since 3 minus 1 is of course 2, this leads us to our final answer, f dash of x is equal to 3x squared. And there you go, we've differentiated a function using the power rule. Let's look at another example. Let's say we're given the function f of x equals to x to the power of 7. Well, again, if we're asked to differentiate this function, we can see that this function is simply a power of x, namely x to the power of 7. So we can use the power rule to differentiate this, and we can go ahead and say that f dash of x is equal to 7 times x to the power of 7 minus 1. 7 minus 1 being equal to 6, this leads us to the answer f dash of x is equal to 7x to the power of 6. And let's look at another. Let's say we're given f of x equals to x. Well, in this case, although it may not be obvious that there's a power here, it's important to remember that when we write f of x equals to x, or simply x, this is the same thing as x to the power of 1. In other words, there is actually a power there, we just never write it. So looking at f of x equals to x, and comparing it to our formula, this is actually saying that this is n equals to 1 in the formula x to the power of n. So once again, even for this, we can use our power rule and differentiate this function and say that f dash of x is equal to 1 times x to the power of 1 minus 1. But now, 1 minus 1, of course, is 0, so this leads us to x to the power of 0. And a very important rule to remember, any number except 0 raised to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So the answer in this case is f dash of x is equal to 1. In fact, that's really worth remembering, making this a sort of special case. So let's go ahead and write that. If f of x is equal to x, then f dash of x is equal to 1. Do remember that. And more generally, just remember that the power rule tells us that if f of x equals to x to the power of n, then f dash of x is equal to n times x to the power of n minus 1. And there you have it. We just learned how to differentiate functions using the power rule.